We'll be looking at the latest feature that was released in Build 2024 by end of May last month. It's called the Data Experience Copilot way of creating Canvas apps. The new change would enable the user to use Copilot prompt to create multiple tables. That's one of the key feature. And you can also ask the Copilot to create those entity relationship using the lookup columns in the other tables that the Canvas app Copilot would create. You could call out for many to one relationship and one to many relationship within the table. So the key functionality or the feature that's added in data experience way of creating app using Copilot prompt is pretty much these couple of things. One is it could create multiple tables. In the past, the feature only had the option to create just one table for the app, and you could design the entity relationship within the Canvas apps using the prompt and then build the app. I'm in an environment which is enabled for early release. So you need to make sure that your environment is set with an early release cycle for you to get that feature. The feature was launched end of May and it took some time to trickle down to my environment. It's in the US. Now you cannot change the status of this environment. You have to create a new one. And here's an environment. Once you land on make.powerapps.com, you would have this feature on the top right corner which says try new data experience. And you could switch it off. And if you switch it off, what you see here is it can still work the old way where you could click one of these built-in prompts or create a prompt and the copilot would create an app, but it will only create one table. And that's what it says. But if you enable this experience, you could see it creates multiple tables, and you could also, of course, bring in the other data sources like SharePoint, Excel, and you could external databases as well. Now, to have this feature enabled, you need to make sure that your environment has an early release cycle or wait until it's pushed on to the standard environment. There's no timeline on which environment or tenant gets this feature. But if I switch back to my other environment, which is also in the US, and you see here at the top right hand corner, I do not have that option. So please make note of this one and ensure that you have the latest environment which has this feature. Now that it's turned on, we could quickly see how it all works together. And keep in mind, it fails sometimes and it works sometimes. So we will see what Copilot with AI at the back end throws right now. I'm going to create a retail table with retail app insert with three tables: customer, product, and invoice. That's what I'm going to give as my prompt. Now you could elaborate this prompt in little further way in terms of telling the prompt to create the relationship between these three tables, create a demo data, make the table size small, large, medium, and stuff like that. But we could always do that once the prompt kicks in and it builds the table before the app is even created. So I wanted to keep it short, but if you wanted to have a complete prompt, that's totally possible as well. So we gotta wait for a few seconds before this prompt goes ahead and creates those table. It only took like 30 seconds, if you will. As you can see, it has created those three different tables. And if I click on product table, you would have the data for the product table. We'll just bring it out here. And it has product IDs and product name. And of course, you can always create a new column, or you could you could ask Copilot in here to create a new column in the product table. You need to make sure you select this table and then say add a new column, whatever name you wanted to, it would. And you can also add more demo data. These things have already been there in the past, so I'm not going to go deep into it. What this feature does is you can create more tables. In the past, we could only create one table and then build an app, but now we could create more tables. So that's one of the feature. The other one is, as you can see, this is a many to one relationship. And obviously, you have the option to remove a data. As you can see, this is a many to one. And if you wanted one to many, you could do that as well. And if I click on customer table, you would have this table schema. And if you wanted to add more column, you could do that, like I said before. Obviously, you're not going to have a production ready app which just has two tables, right? You would need more. But what it makes it easier is it does most of the things for you. And as a pro code developer or a low code developer, all you have to do is build on top of it. It kind of shortens the time and it gives you the head start so you could move faster. And you could, of course, change those data type columns here, and that's totally possible. You would want some of those lookup columns, so you could do that relationship. So if you click on customer ID, that is a lookup column. So because this is connected to the customer table, meaning many records here can be connected to this table, which is the customer table, right? And then if I click on save and open app, it would go ahead and create the app, which we have seen that before as well. So that's one of the latest feature. I thought this was pretty cool. The other one is if you want to add a new table, let's say your prompt was, okay, you build this, but then you realize you needed another table. You could go ahead here and then describe a new table. And of course, you can add more data and column. And of course, you could bring in the external resources as well. So now, if I click on this, it gives another prompt right in here. So this is one way to do it. The other way to do it is you could use this one as well. So we are looking at Copilot in many places. So you got to be careful. You could still use this one, or you could come here and use this prompt. This is pretty much a prompt asking you what you want to do. So let's say create a new table called case and link it. Rather, we would just create a table and then we will see how we could link it either manually or through the prompt. Now, before I hit generate, you could use these options. Like I said before, you decide what the table size looks like in terms of demo data and stuff like that. And if you wanted to include relationship and you want one table or multiple tables. Since I said create a new table called case, so it assumes that it's just one table and it's going to create one table. Like I said, you either can go and click on this and input the prompt, or you can do it here as well. So this didn't work. What we will do is we would use the prompt out here and see if it works. It worked. So this is not something that I could control, but I'm recording this as is. So there is a disclaimer that AI features can make errors. So if this doesn't work, this prompt out here, you can use this prompt, right? So now if I click on case table, it's going to show pretty much similar stuff out in here. But what you would notice is this is not connected or linked to any other table within this schema structure. And this is one of the other key feature besides creating multiple tables. Creating the relationship out here is another feature. In the past, we would always go to tables, create new tables, and start doing this manually. But with this feature, things are pretty much easier and faster as well. Now, you could either select this and connect to any of the table for the relationship, but make sure that the lookup column is available when with the table that you're connecting to. Otherwise, it wouldn't just create that relationship, right? The other way to do it is you could add a lookup column and then connect that to that particular table, right? So, for example, I want this to be connected to the customer. So I click on the customer and I can use this prompt here and say, add a lookup column connecting to the case table. We'll see what happens. So it will throw error in case if it can't find the lookup column, but we are asking the prompt to create a lookup column and then do the connection between the case table. All right, so it's done. It's kind of connected to the invoice where the invoice would have a lookup column, which is in turn a many to one connection towards the customer table, right? So this is pretty neat feature. If you wanted to quickly create your data structure before you create your app, plus it gives you room to create as much as tables you want. And as you can see here, case column is a lookup column here. Okay, and then it connects with the customer name and customer IDs out here. Now that is all about the features. Of course, there are a lot of properties and click-throughs here which you could look through and try to play around. But this is the core functionality. And now we would go ahead and create the app. This is going to take a few seconds. While it's happening, what I wanted to share is in the past we went through a phase where the default environment where it's open for every users, and of course the restrictions on default environment is pretty limited even using the center of excellence toolkit and power automate flows, but you could still avoid creating a database environment for those users. The story behind this particular scenario is we had app sprawl when it took a lot of pain for the admins to clean up those apps. And thanks to the COE toolkit, now we could literally automate the stale apps, the app that's not used for X number of days and stuff like that. So that's all automated. Now, with this easy way to create a lot of tables, what the pro admins app maker would face is table sprawl. So you got to make sure that you restrict the environment where these features are switched on and make sure the data was in environment is not enabled. Otherwise, you're going to see a lot of people trying to create this prompt and trying to create the apps, and you need to clean it up. So it's better to put those rail guards in place. As you can see, my environment is already cluttered with lots and lots of table, the one that we just created here, case and stuff like that. So this is another thing. If you're an admin, app maker, or the person who manages the environment and tenant, make sure that people doesn't use the prompt for creating, you know, test or development related work or just to try it out, but not only using it for the real purpose, but just testing it and then leaving it as is. You're going to see a lot of table in here. And needless to say, DataOS is one of the expensive SKU item within the Power Platform stack. So you want to keep an eye on this and make sure that you have the right Power Automate script or COE settings that would enable you to auto delete, detect, and delete the tables that's not required for business purposes. Or in other words, you might as well disable the database environment so people cannot use this feature. So take note of that as well. Now let's hop back to this page where the app was being created. We will not spend a lot of time on this app. It's pretty straightforward. And what is nice about this one is it kind of gives you a home page with all of those tables that we created, like cases, customers, invoices, which has those relationship as well. And on top of that, you try to build those UIs and flows, business flows, and security rules for users and stuff like that, and then make it relevant for the way that you want it to. The last thing is you could go to database settings here, and these are the tables that was generated by Copilot. Obviously, you could pretty much do that from here and start creating new tables, but this way it is pretty faster and easier and simpler. Now, the reason why I said keep an eye on table sprawl is because, for example, if I wanted to delete, this is the case table that we just created using the AI prompt. Now, if I want to delete it, I just can't simply delete it because it has relationship and some data in there. So it's not a point through click and delete option that we have here. Now I can delete it from here or I can press this button. Now if I delete, it wouldn't delete. You got to clean up the relationship, which is linked to the customer master or invoice master, and then do the deletion. You can't do a bulk delete either because it has its own relationship linked to it. So cleaning up would be a problem unless you write automated scripts to do it. So make sure when you enable this feature for the business users or users who really just want to play around and not really make any business value, you want to restrict or create an isolated environment and sunset that environment after X number of days. Otherwise, we're going to see a lot of table sprawl. And as you can see, I've created quite a few tables trying this demo in the past. So that's another tip that I wanted to let the user community know as well. And that is pretty much the end of this demo. Thank you.